When going on holiday, we often look for beauty spots, beaches, and interesting museums to fill up our time. Most people like to opt for a relaxing stay in a nice warm climate. However, some people would prefer a more action-packed trip filled with some of the creepiest places on Earth you should never visit. Number 5. In the early 20th century, a disease now known as tuberculosis spread through the entire world, causing untold damage to millions. This disease affects the lungs, causing them to fill up with fluid, and it can spread to other parts of the body. In an attempt to curb the spread of TB and provide treatment to those affected, countries around the world began sending those affected to sanatoriums. One such sanatorium was built in Waverly Hills, Louisville, Kentucky, and while the building is open for tours today, it's one of the scariest places on Earth that you should never visit. In the early 1900s, the Waverly Sanatorium was only designed to hold 40 patients. However, as TB spread, they were forced to expand in order to cope with demand. By 1926, the number of beds had multiplied by tenfold, and the Waverly Hills Sanatorium had increased its capacity to 450. Each day, patients would be ferried in and out of the sanatorium, hoping that new cutting-edge medicines and procedures would save their lives. Unfortunately, not everyone could be saved, and the bodies of those infected were wheeled down a secret passage called the Body Chute on a railroad that had trains waiting to take them away. The sanatorium's administration wanted to hide these bodies from patients still recovering, and as a result, there's no accurate record of how many people lost their lives at Waverly Sanatorium. Once TB became more treatable, the sanatorium was turned into a sanitarium, a place where people could receive treatment for mental health conditions, and the rumors and legends began to swirl. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is no stranger to ghost stories and urban legends, and given its creepy history, it's easy to see why. People who have been brave enough to sneak into the abandoned hospital have reported seeing numerous ghosts of men in white coats, or of patients who spent their last days on the hospital's grounds. According to legend, the most haunted place in the sanatorium is room 502, where a nurse took her own life in 1928. People have reported seeing shadowy figures and hearing voices of those who were once patients at the sanatorium and sanitarium. The legend of room 502 has persisted, and avid ghost hunters flock to the once nurses' quarters in the hopes of seeing the ghost of the nurse from 1928. The sanatorium is now being restored and looked after by the Waverly Hills Historical Society that runs tours and dedicates their time to preserving history. The question is, would you be brave enough to take a nighttime tour in one of the scariest hospitals in history? Number 4. Nestled away in the Chicago metropolitan area lies the Bachelors Grove Cemetery, the final resting place to hundreds, if not thousands of people. A cemetery can be scary at times, especially in the dark, not knowing if the ghost or ghosts of those buried there may make an appearance. But cemeteries can often provide a sense of peace and comfort to loved ones, knowing that their loved one is finally at rest. Unfortunately, the Bachelors Grove Cemetery in Chicago is considered to be one of the scariest and most haunted cemeteries in the US, and for good reason. The last burial in the cemetery took place in 1989, and since then, it has remained untouched and abandoned. There are, of course, living relatives of some of those buried there, but most visitors have come for a very different reason. The Bachelors Grove Cemetery is rumored to be one of the most haunted in the US. According to legend, the most prominent ghost is that of the Madonna of Bachelors Grove. If you visit the cemetery, you might spot the shadowy apparition of the lady in white who roams around the cemetery. Some reports state that she's looking for her child, while others state that the child is in her arms. She can be seen floating around, scaring those who dare enter the abandoned cemetery. She isn't the only ghost to haunt Bachelors Grove, and the official website has an entire page dedicated to its paranormal history, along with the mysterious lady in white. While making your way around Bachelors Grove, You might also see ghostly cars, glowing orbs, and a bizarre two-headed creature that appears within the blink of an eye, only to be gone the next. The cemetery is now being maintained and cared for after it was vandalized, and tours regularly run, welcoming in hundreds of visitors each year. Are you brave enough to take a moonlit tour of this once abandoned cemetery? Number 3. The infamous story of the Bell Witch originates from 1817, when the Bell family moved to Robertson, Tennessee to begin a new prosperous life of farming. John, the father and head of the family, had moved everyone from North Carolina to Tennessee for a fresh start, and was hoping to kickstart the family's legacy on a farm. Unfortunately, John and the Bell family got a lot more than they bargained for, and over 200 years later, this piece of land is regarded as one of the scariest on the planet. According to stories and local folk legend, the Bell family began experiencing bizarre paranormal activity shortly after they settled into their new home. As they were adjusting to their new lives, the family heard rattling chains and the voice of a woman who's gone on to become known as the Bell Witch, and this witch would taunt the Bell family. There are differing accounts of how the witch came to be, but the most prominent is that a neighbor of the Bell family, Kate Batts, felt that she'd been cheated out of land by John. Before she passed, Kate promised that she would come back to haunt the Bell family, and announced that she'd put a great curse on not just John, but the many generations to come. John Bell passed away under mysterious circumstances soon after Kate declared her curse upon his family, and many believe that the Bell Witch is responsible. Unfortunately, the Bell House is no longer standing. However, the Bell Witch Cave is open to visitors. This cave sits in the very property where the Bell family were haunted by the infamous witch, and some say that the cave is just as haunted. Items from the Bell home are displayed within the cave, giving it a very eerie feel. Be warned, if you enter the Bell Witch Cave, you might just come out with a curse that you cannot shake. Number 2. In 1829, the Eastern State Penitentiary was opened by the Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons in a bid to provide a new cutting-edge way for people to do their time. What started out as a bid to give prisoners better treatment and give them a chance once they were released quickly morphed into something much darker. The Eastern State Penitentiary was the first of its kind, and the people of Philadelphia had not forgotten its dark history. Prisoners were not allowed to interact with anyone else in the prison. Prisoners could not make small talk with their peers through the walls, and they were not allowed to talk to the prison guards. They had skylights in their cells in the hopes that the divine light of God would reach them. However, this just let in the cold and the rain. If you were taken to Eastern State Penitentiary to serve your sentence, you could expect to be kept in your cell at all times with no human interaction. On the rare occasion that you were let out, you would be blindfolded and led to wherever you were going. The only book that prisoners were allowed was a Bible, and shortly after it opened, the conditions were described as miserable. Prisoners who broke the rules were often taken down to the basement and left in dark rooms with no light and no toilet. Thankfully, the prison administration saw the error of their ways and changed the prison to a more standard one like we see today. The walls of the Eastern State Penitentiary had been home to numerous famous criminals, including Al Capone. Due to his status and money, Capone lived a better life than most prisoners. However, it certainly wasn't the life of luxury he was used to on the outside. In 1971, the gates of the Eastern State Penitentiary closed for the last time, and it was left abandoned until 1994, when a local group decided to preserve it and open it up for tours. Those who visit Eastern State Penitentiary report seeing ghostly apparitions wandering through the halls. One of the most infamous stories comes from Cell Block 4. Gary Johnson reported to NPR that while he was helping to restore Eastern State for visitors, quote, he had just opened up an old lock in Cell Block 4, when he says a force gripped him so tightly he was unable to move. He described a negative, horrible energy that exploded out of the cell. He said faces appeared on the walls, and that one form in particular beckoned to him. The Eastern State Penitentiary is currently open to visitors, and guided tours of the old cell blocks are available. Number 1. At 53 to 55 Crumlin Road in Belfast, County Antrim, sits the infamous Crumlin Road Jail. This prison was built in the 19th century and was designed to hold the rule breakers across County Antrim and Northern Ireland. This prison has a rich history, and it has cemented itself as one of the creepiest places in Northern Ireland. The prison officially closed its doors to prisoners in 1996, and since then it's become a popular tourist attraction. Over the years, many people have reported seeing ghosts of prisoners and wardens, and report a strange feeling coming over them while they walk down the hallways of the prison. The Crumlin Road Jail had over 25,000 prisoners pass through its doors, and their crimes ranged from simple theft to some of the most serious charges out there. Prisoners got married, had children, and also met their end within the walls of Crumlin Road Jail, and Cell 13 is said to be the creepiest cell of them all. Condemned prisoners would be transferred to Cell 17 and would await their fates. The remains of some prisoners still remain on prison grounds, and in 2019, a woman from Cork, Ireland, reported a very creepy incident during a guided tour. She told Belfast Live, quote, "All the tours go down C Wing, so I just stood at the gates to B Wing and snapped a few photos just in case. The wing was in darkness, there was nobody down there, but I noticed it when we got back to where we were staying and I had a look through the photos and zoomed in. To me, it looks like a man in uniform looking down the corridor. You can even see the chin strap of his hat." This isn't the only ghost to have been spotted in Crumlin Road, and in 2016, a Queen's University student reported seeing the ghost of a small child. She recalled to Belfast Live, quote, "I would be quite a skeptical person. That's why I was so taken aback. That's why it freaked me out. It was the wing I felt the most weird and unsettled in, and it was freezing cold." For anyone who finds themselves on Emerald Isles, the Crumlin Road Jail is open to visitors for just £12. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.